and welcome everyone. Lovely to see you and Happy New Year, Happy 2021. I am recording the meeting, but none of you individually will be recorded. And if we do have any chat, I will turn the recording off. So I'm just trying to capture a couple of points that I'm going to talk about today so that I can use them in future if I want to use them as part of my teaching portfolio. So if you are new to the group and not been before, or in fact, if you're new to mindfulness, please put something in the chat to say hi so that we can know that you're here and say hello to you. So it's just nice if you don't mind putting something in the chat just to say hi and I'm new. So I think a couple of people's names I haven't seen before, and it's just nice to know that this is your first time. So we are going all the way through to March. So thank you, Allegan, and thank you, Abvi. Once again, wellness and your happiness and flourishing is, you know, in the minds of people sufficiently that they are continuing to run mindfulness sessions with us. So that's really nice. Hi, yes, great. Second session and new to AbbVie, great. Well, welcome, and I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, so I think it's just wonderful that the organization understands that this is important time and important ways of engaging with ourselves that support our resilience, support our well-being, support our mind and how we use our mind. So just to let people know who've just joined that I'm recording the front end, but I won't record the back end, and I won't record anything that you say personally. As it is the new year, I wanted to ask you how you approach a new year. So do you consider it like the turning of a page, you know, a brand new start? Do you consider that a new year is a load of codswallop? Do you sort of have some significance for you around a new year and the turn of the seasons? The turn, it is of course the change of the day length changes. The equinox comes and goes around the middle of December, so we are actually changing from a natural perspective. So I wonder how many of you look at the new year as, you know, a clean page, a fresh slate, something new, a new arrival. And I wonder also if you made any New Year's resolutions. And if you did make a New Year's resolution, how you feel about that, you know, whether you feel that it's achievable, realistic, whether you feel like you're good at setting goals and achieving them, or whether in fact you have a history of making resolutions and not living up to them. And I wonder too if you made New Year's Eve resolutions last year and how you got on with those and whether that tells you anything. So today I wanted to talk about how we approach personal change and what mindfulness teaches us about the idea of change, because mindfulness is fundamentally about personal transformation. But as you know, with anything, it's never instant. And so although we may embark on a mindfulness practice to support ourselves or to bring about some change in ourselves, it can be really slow and very, very hard to see anything that is changing. But I can also assure you that after many years of practice, I look back and it really has lived up to its promise of being transformational. And so one of the reasons I am so keen on mindfulness and why I teach so often and engage with so many different groups is because I genuinely believe that mindfulness teaches us something about change where it can be painless. And most people find that change is actually not painless. Most people find change is painful and very difficult. So I'm going to talk you through what mindfulness teaches us about change, and then invite you to do some practice with me, and we'll apply what I teach to the practice that we do. So there are two really, really important lessons from mindfulness as regards change. The first is that mostly we change because we are running away from something or moving away from something. We are confronted with something in our lives that we don't like, and we therefore are motivated to change. Now, we can also talk about change not just at the personal level, but we can talk about change within your organization at the team level, for example, or even at the organization level. For example, you've just been through a merger. So, we can think about the change and what needs to be achieved at all levels, the micro, the meso, and the macro level. But normally change is provoked from a difficulty or an uncomfortableness or something that we don't like. And that causes us to move away. And that is the motivation for change. And that is actually the first mistake, to think of change as a moving away from something. And the other way of thinking about change is to think about moving towards something. Now, there's some really interesting science behind this. And the science is based on a maze, a blind maze. And there's a mouse in the maze, and they've done this many, many times, of course. So it's not just one mouse, it's many mice, and it's not just one maze, it's many mazes. But what they do is they place a mouse in the maze, and then they project behind the mouse the image of an owl. So this is the difficulty, this is the thing that the mouse wants to get away from. So this is the motivating force, it's the owl. And so off the mouse goes through the maze, trying to find a way out, motivated by avoiding or moving away from the owl. And eventually there is a way out of the maze, and the mouse thinks that it has saved its life. And what they've done while this mouse is running through the maze is they've timed it. They've, set a stopwatch to see how long it takes the mouse to figure out how to get out of the maze. Then they repeat the same experiment. So you'll recognize the basis of all good experiments is that the factors are held the same, except one factor has changed. And the one factor that has changed is, instead of the image of an owl, they put a lump of cheese in the middle of the maze. So now the mouse is not moving away from something, the mouse is moving towards something. And again, off the mouse goes, zoom, zoom, zoom through the maze, and they time the mouse. And as I say, they've done this again and again and again. And the conclusion from this very simple experiment is that when the motivation is to move towards something, everything happens much more quickly. So the mouse figures out the maze more quickly. And we can apply this to human psychology as well. When we stop thinking about change as a giving up or an avoiding or a stopping, and instead frame our change as a moving towards or a going towards or giving ourselves something, then that is a stronger motivation. So just everybody who knows me will know that my love of chocolate biscuits is a personal change that I'm always encouraging myself to do. So instead of saying to myself, I give up my chocolate biscuits, I can incentivize myself much more by saying, I am moving towards good health, or I am giving myself the opportunity to eat a wider range of fruit, for example, or more exotic fruit. So, you know, if I have the choice actually between chocolate biscuits and a beautifully ripe mango, actually, a beautifully ripe mango for me is just as gorgeous as a chocolate biscuit, and I will feel better about it. So this is one of the tricks that we can learn through mindfulness, is noticing when we are changing ourselves or when we're trying to implement change. As I say, it might be ourselves, it might be the team, it might be an organization. We can stop thinking about moving away. Somebody's saying they're going for both. Yeah, okay. Very nice, thank you. But you'll feel better if you just stay with the mango, even if you gorge on mango, right? Even if you absolutely stuff your face with mango, the sense that you will be left with is, you know, a much better bodily sense than if you even have one or two chocolate biscuits. So moving away is a good incentive, and there are times, of course, when we need to move away from things. So we move away from harm, for example. You know, if we're going to put our hand on a flame or on a hot element, we don't stop and say, oh my goodness, you know, I don't want to move away from the flame or the hot element, I must move towards something. I mean, that's not feasible, and that's not probably a good thing to do, because you'll lose a lot of time doing that thinking. But honestly, you know, if you just stop and think about, you know, how we frame change as a giving up, we are already putting in to our brain the idea of giving up or depriving ourselves of something. And if you've ever been a smoker, this is a really tough one, because we all talk about giving up cigarettes or giving up nicotine or giving up even vaping, for example. So we framed it as a giving up, as a depletion, as something we're depriving ourselves of. So again, thinking about moving towards good health, thinking about moving towards feeling better about ourselves, moving towards creating a safer environment for our kids if we're smoking in the house, for example. And I can't quite keep up with all the chats, but I'll come back to them in just a second, because I really am really interested in what you guys are saying. So I'm just going to get them up. So I'd go for both. I quite like the distinction between moving towards something and what's the rest of that? Okay, moving towards something. Now what you're saying is showing that is how I think already. So a positive thing in my life. Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So somebody's already figured out that they're doing this in a positive way. There's some interesting work that shows away motivation is best for overcoming inertia to begin change, and towards motivation is what sustains the change. Okay, I didn't know that. I don't know that research, so I'll check it out. Thank you for that. That's really great. So the second lesson of mindfulness is that we try often to implement change in huge chunks. And we dream up something that is super visionary. You know, it's really inspiring and it's very motivating, and it's a big thing. You know, climb a mountain. And I'm not going to deter you from having big dreams and big hopes, but sometimes, especially when we're not feeling very well or we're not feeling on top of our game, if we have set a really ambitious target for ourselves, that actually can contribute to a spiral of depletion and a spiral of demotivation. So, you know, if we say we're going to run a marathon and that means that we have to train 5 days a week, and then we find ourselves unable to train 1 or 2 days because of the rain or because we have an injury or something like that, suddenly the marathon feels so far away for us that actually it can deter us from picking it up again. So actually, you know, the idea in mindfulness is that we think about actually just building momentum. We're less engaged in the final endeavor. And again, I've got a whole lot to say about being too goal oriented, because goals sometimes do need to shift, and then that can be a source of demotivation as well. But in mindfulness, we like the idea of having something to shoot for, but we're much more involved and much more engaged in the small things that are happening in the day-to-day. And these very small things are the things that we can use to help ourselves build momentum. And there's a couple of great metaphors that come in nature. So, for example, if we have a calm pool and we get a rock and we throw a rock into the pool, we can see that one little thing has a big ripple effect. Similarly, in nature, it's often said that we can have days and weeks of snowfall, and then it's the last, you know, half an hour of snowfall that causes the avalanche. Well, of course, that's not entirely true, because all the previous amount of snow has caused the avalanche, but it just takes that last little bit to start the momentum, get the momentum going. And one of the teachers I had in Oxford, Professor Melanie Fennell, she used to use the idea of navigating a yacht, and I do sail, so it was a metaphor that struck me very well. And she says, look, when you're navigating, you often just take 1 degree of difference. You know, you just deviate from your path by 1 degree. And you do know that as you're moving along, you know, that 1 degree makes more and more of a difference. And that's the idea behind momentum. You're just starting with something very simple and very small. And most importantly, you're starting with something that's really achievable. And that makes you feel like you can actually accomplish something, and that encourages you to do it again. And then lo and behold, that's how you develop momentum. So just getting a couple of comments here. Lovely to see you chatting. I really appreciate this engagement. So definitely need to build some momentum, as a new year is a new page for me, until we received the Boris Johnson announcement on Monday. And now it's like, ugh, yeah. Yeah, well, that's why I thought we'd kind of look at some of these things, is because I know that some people are back into homeschooling, so it might feel like all the time that you had for yourself is now completely eroded. And so where on earth are you going to find time to be mindful, or to do more yoga, or go for a run, or read that book that you promised yourself, or, you know, start writing letters again, or any of the things that we often promise ourselves. And then Boris Johnson locks us down again. We've got to start homeschooling. You're probably even more engaged in Zoom calls or team calls, and the emails are relentless. So thinking about how we structure our lives and how we really help ourselves to do things that feel good and are achievable. Because if we have the satisfaction of one step, just one thing, then it's quite remarkable. And as I say, this is where the transformation comes, because it's so simple and so small, and actually that also makes it very painless. And then before you know it, you know, just a few weeks and things have shifted quite substantially. So I'm going to stop recording, and